Now they're just reduced to live in Rome, Ancona, and part of the north of Italy, not everywhere. An island of freedom was Veneto region and the town of Padua, because Padua was very important. It's very important for the history of the Jews in Europe because it was the only place where Jews could receive a degree and receive a doctorate in medicine. You know, university at that time only Christian could receive doctorate, study, and so on. But Jews are admitted to study medicine there, and we have more than 400 Jews documented becoming doctor in medicine in Padua in the 17th and 18th century. And you know, the basically you studied there, you had lots of professors, and then in order to receive the doctorate, one professor had to propose you to the rest of the university, take you under his arm, propose you, and so on. And we have the famous Galileo Galilei, who was a professor in Padua, and he in fact himself proposed some Jews to receive the doctorate. For instance, the Jew from Mantua, Davide Portaleoni. So there was certainly no animosity, no prejudice at all toward Jews from the great Galileo Galilei, who was persecuted by the church. So moving now to the 17th century, the centuries between, let's say, 1600 and 1800, they are called the age of the ghettos. The first ghetto, as we said, is established in Venice in 1516, and it becomes an accepted institution of Italy north of Rome from the end of the 16th century onwards. Ghettos continue to be established even much later. The latest ghettos were established in the 19th century in Italy, just imagine. I think the last one was Guastalla at the beginning of the 19th century. Of course, in territories of the church. These ghettos are locked at night, and the Jews which want to get out of the ghetto, they're compelled to wear a sign, a badge on their garment. And Jews could not enter any professions except medicine, still compelled to attend conversionary sermons and the rest of the rest. Where do we have a noticeable exception, which I think is should be interesting for you? In Leghorn, Livorno, and Pisa. They are a remarkable exception because the Grand Duke Ferdinand wanted to develop the commercial trade from Livorno, and he promulgated the so-called Livornina. Livornina, which concerned also Pisa, by the way. It meant that in 1593 he invited Jews and conversos and people from any religion or nationality to settle in Livorno and Pisa. At first, you know, the Sephardic Jews were a bit cautious because the memory was fresh from the burning of the Jews in Ancona, the expulsion from Antwerp, the persecution in Ferrara in 1581, and so on. However, they start coming because the amount of privilege that they are offered is uncomparable to the situation in any other country in Europe at the end of the 16th century. And they were offered, amongst other, freedom of religion and trade, complete freedom from any interference of the Inquisition, if they were conversos, and the Grand Duke invites not only Sephardic Jews to come, but the invitation is also extended to Italian and German Jews, although it is mainly Sephardic Jews who come. Basically, the Hebrew nation could be a separate body, ruled by its own laws, and it had the privilege of living according to its own religion, laws, customs, and as well as attaining complete legal autonomy. There was a sort of So Jews could come to Livorno. The Grand Duke was happy, but among the privileges that the Jews of Livorno had was this system which they call ballottaggio. Ballot. What was this? It means that any Jew coming to Livorno, it had to be accepted by the existing Jews. They were voting. And that's how we end up with a great majority of Sephardic Jews. Because they were usually welcoming other Sephardic Jews and less welcoming, if the Jews were of Italian, German origin, and so on. And in order to be accepted in the community, must have a majority of votes coming from the members of the community. But they were free from, all the Jews there were free from wearing the hated yellow or red sign on their clothes. They could open shops wherever they wanted. They could have Christian servants. This was amazing in Italy at the time. They could study medicine, heal Christians, leave their inheritance to whoever they wanted, and even more amazing, they didn't have to pay any tax, except neither ordinary tax nor extraordinary tax, except the only exception, obviously, of custom tax. This Livornina, also one very important thing, it was forbidden the conversion of any Jew to Christianity before the age of 13. This was a huge issue in Italy because, according to the Christian church, if anyone was sprinkling water over the head of the child saying, "I baptize you," that was the end of it. The child was taken away from the family, was put usually in convents or in seminars if it was a boy, in convents if it was a girl, usually to be trained to become a priest or a nun. There was nothing you could do about it. So the Jews are very, very careful always not to leave, for instance, the child alone with a servant who might want to do this and so on. There is Steven Spielberg is doing a movie about this, the famous Mortara family. It was very late. It was very, very late in 1858 in Bologna. A 6-year-old child was taken away from his family because a servant has put some water over its head, thinking that he was ill and he would go to hell and so on. And even when the French Emperor Napoleon III made pressure on the church to give the child back to the family, the Pope refused. Horrible story, really. So yeah, I was talking about Livorno. Livorno, of course. So Sir Moses Montefiore, I'm sure you know that he was born in Livorno in 784. Maybe you don't know where he came before arriving to Livorno. So in fact, the surname Montefiore, it's a small place in the Marche region. And the Montefiore family, originally, at the time of expulsion, went to live in Ancona. And it was from Ancona that they moved to Livorno, carrying with them the surname of the original place where they came from. Jews going to Livorno. In 1570, there was not a single Jew in Livorno. 1 century later, we have 1,250 Jews living there. Apart from Livorno, we had Tuscany. You had several Jewish communities, divided basically into 3 groups. You had autochthonous Italian Jews who were mainly concentrated in the ghettos of Florence and Siena. You had Sephardic Jews in Livorno and Pisa. And then you had many small places where Roman Jews fleeing from the church in Rome, they settled there under the protection of some local rulers and staying there basically. Many Jews also at the time, in this age of the ghettos, they also left Italy to go to the east. They started even before. There is this book which is called The History of Italian Jews in the East. And you will find many Jewish communities in Turkey, Greece, Yugoslavia, ex-Yugoslavia, and so on, where you find people with Italian surnames, perfectly Italian Jewish surnames. This was the flow of Jews leaving Italy to the east during the difficult times. So in the 17th and 18th centuries, Jews lived around in 70 places in Italy, a population of around 30,000 people. If you think about it, the whole population of Jews in Italy was less than the town of Salonika itself in Greece. Out of these, 6,000 Jews were in Rome, 3,000 or 4,000 in Livorno, and the war situation was bear by the Jews in Rome because they were forced to they could trade only in rags. They had to pay very high taxes, and the community was in such dire financial straits that they had to declare bankruptcy in 1868. And another important development for Jewish community in Italy is the establishment of a Jewish community in Trieste, because this happened when the Emperor Charles VI established the free trade, free sailing in the Adriatic, so ending the monopoly of Venice. And 2 years later, in order to develop the maritime trade, he gave to Trieste the privilege of being a Porto Franco, so a port where you didn't have to pay custom taxes and so on. Also, the Empress Maria Theresa continued its liberal policy towards foreigners, including Jews, and gave also Jews could go to Trieste, have total religious freedom, and so on. And they were given also the privilege of living outside the ghetto in Trieste in 1753. And it is important in this respect to know, the first insurance companies, they were created in Trieste between 1760 and 1770 by some Jewish family, the Levi family, Morpurgo family, Hirscher family, Alpron family, and so on. So by 1778, there was a community of 670 persons, and one member of the Morpurgo family, Morpurgo from the town of Marburg, originally Ashkenazi, coming to Morpurgo in Italy, he founded the famous Assicurazioni Generali, which is one of the biggest in the world. They were founded by the Morpurgo family and had for many, many years Jewish owners, Jewish presidents, and so on. The Morpurgo family also created the Lloyd Austrian shipping company, and one member of the Morpurgo family was for 48 years